The sirens wailed in the distance as the city glittered beneath the night sky, a city built on ambition, pride, and broken hearts. Inside the marble lobby of Skyline Corporation, two figures stood facing each other under the cold glow of fluorescent light. One, a woman in a sleek black suit, her posture sharp as a blade. The other, a man in a security uniform, rain dripping from his shoulders, eyes filled with quiet pain. "Don't follow me anymore," she said coldly. "You're my husband, not my shadow." He didn't flinch. "I'm your guard because I promised to protect you even from yourself." The silence that followed was heavier than the thunder outside. Her eyes, once full of love, now burned with anger and confusion. "Liam, do you even realize how it feels to be the CEO of a global company while your husband stands outside my door like a servant?" He looked at her for a long moment, rainwater sliding down his jaw, and said quietly, "Maybe I do. Maybe I know exactly what it feels like to be looked down on by the person I'd die for." Her breath caught. For a second, something in her chest cracked, something she thought she'd buried long ago. The elevator door opened behind her. She stepped in without another word, her reflection splitting in the mirrored walls, half power, half regret. As the doors closed, Liam whispered softly to no one, "You think I'm just a guard, Arya, but if you knew what I've done to keep you safe, you'd never look at me the same again." The next morning, sunlight filtered through the glass tower of the Everlight building, the headquarters of Skyline Corp and the empire that bore Arya Sullivan's name. At just 32, she was one of the most feared and admired CEOs in the country. Headlines called her the Iron Lady of Skyline. But power came at a price, and lately, that price was her heart. She walked briskly into her corner office, her assistant following behind with a tablet. "Cancel all meetings before noon," she said. "And tell finance the new merger deal must close by Friday. No excuses." Her tone was firm, but her eyes were distant, still echoing with the words Liam had said the night before. When the last employee left, silence filled the vast glass room. The skyline stretched endlessly before her, yet she felt trapped inside her own success. Her phone buzzed. A message from Liam. "Lunch is on your desk. You skipped breakfast again." She stared at it for a moment before locking the phone and setting it aside. She couldn't deal with him, not now. Not when she still felt torn between love and resentment. They had met 7 years ago, not in boardrooms, not through business, but in a small street cafe during a heavy storm. Arya had been a struggling businesswoman back then, trying to convince investors to believe in her vision. When a mugger tried to snatch her bag, a stranger had stepped in, calm, fearless, protective. That stranger was Liam Carter. She remembered the warmth in his smile that night, the gentleness in his eyes when he handed her bag back. They'd talked for hours after that. About dreams. About life. About peace. He never told her much about his past, only that he was done with violence and wanted a simple life. She fell for his quiet strength. But as her company grew, so did her ego. While Arya rose to fame, Liam chose to remain ordinary, working as a security officer. At first, she admired his humility. Then, she began to resent it. "You could do more," she'd told him once. "You're wasting your potential." "Maybe peace is my potential," he'd replied gently. Not everyone measures success the same way. Those words, "not everyone measures success the same way," became a wedge between them. In the gleaming halls of Skyline Corp, whispers followed Arya everywhere. "The CEO's husband is just a guard?" She must be embarrassed. Maybe that's why she never talks about him. She ignored them until one morning when she saw Liam at the building entrance, greeting employees with quiet courtesy. As she walked past, she caught sight of 2 junior executives smirking. Something in her snapped. She walked right past Liam without even acknowledging him. That night, he came home to silence. She sat at the dining table, untouched dinner before her. "Liam," she said quietly, "maybe it's time we stop pretending." "Pretending what?" he asked. "That this marriage is working." His eyes flickered with pain, but his voice stayed calm. "If that's what you think, I won't stop you. But don't mistake my silence for weakness, Arya." Sometimes, love means letting someone break, without shattering with them. Her eyes filled, but she turned away before he could see. 2 weeks later, Victor Kellen, a wealthy investor from abroad, joined Skyline's latest project. He was charming, arrogant, and dangerously smooth. He made no secret of his admiration for Aria. During meetings, he'd compliment her brilliance. After hours, he'd linger too long near her desk. Liam noticed, as always. He said nothing, but his watchful eyes followed every movement. One night after a company gala, Aria waited for her car in the dimly lit parking area. Victor approached, wineglass in hand and mischief in his grin. "You know, Aria," he said, stepping closer, "you deserve someone who can match your worth, not someone who guards your door." She froze. "Mr. Kellen, you're drunk. Go home." "Or maybe," he said, smirking, "you just don't want to admit I'm right." Before she could reply, a firm hand gripped Victor's wrist. The glass fell and shattered. Liam stood there, silent, steady, ice cold. "Step back," he said. Victor laughed mockingly. The guard thinks he's a hero? But when he met Liam's gaze, something in his smirk faltered. There was an intensity there, disciplined, dangerous, unshakable. "Next time you talk to my wife like that," Liam said evenly, "you'll regret it." Victor stepped back, muttering curses, before walking away. Aria stood frozen, heart racing. She had never seen Liam like that. The calmness she'd taken for weakness now looked like power restrained, like a soldier in disguise. Days later, while reviewing employee files, Aria's assistant Maya entered her office with a nervous look. "Ma'am, this came up during a background review. It's about Mr. Carter." Aria frowned. "What about him?" Maya hesitated before setting a folder on the desk. Inside were military insignias, confidential seals, and redacted paragraphs. The top page read, "Operation Serpent, Classified Military Report." Below, a photograph, Liam, younger, in uniform. Captain Liam Carter, Special Forces Intelligence Division. Aria's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. Awards. Commendations. Mentions of valor. And then, honorably discharged after Operation Serpent mission failure. Reason, psychological recovery and voluntary withdrawal. She dropped the file, breath-catching. All those times he'd avoided talking about his scars. The nightmares. The quiet moments of distance. He wasn't avoiding her, he was protecting her from the memories he carried. That night, Aria waited for him. When Liam came home, tired but calm, she was already standing near the window, holding the file. He froze. "Where did you get that?" "It doesn't matter," she said quietly. "Why didn't you tell me?" Liam exhaled slowly, looking down. "Because I didn't want my past to define our future." "But it already has," she cried. "All this time I thought you'd given up. I thought. You thought I wasn't enough for you." The words cut through her like glass. She looked away, tears gathering. "Maybe I did." He nodded once, pain flickering across his face. "You wanted someone perfect. I just wanted peace. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to live with the shadows I've seen." Her voice broke. "You were hiding from me." "No," he said softly. "I was hiding you from the war that still lives in me." Silence. Heavy. Breathless. Finally, he turned toward the door. Maybe love isn't enough when one person forgets what it means. And he walked out, leaving her in the dim light, the sound of her own heartbeat echoing in the emptiness. Alone with her guilt. Days turned to weeks. Aria went to work like a ghost, her eyes hollow, her voice quieter. The rumors grew. Victor spread whispers that she was emotionally unstable. But she didn't fight back. She didn't care. All she could think of was Liam's face that night. Every word he'd said, "I just wanted peace." Every sacrifice she'd mistaken for weakness. Then, one stormy evening, her phone buzzed. "Ma'am, there's been an incident in the lower garage," came the voice from security. An intruder tried to break in. The guard stopped them, but what? It's Mr. Carter, ma'am. He's been hurt. Aria's blood ran cold. Without hesitation, she ran down the halls, past the elevator, through the lobby, her heels echoing against marble like desperate heartbeats. When she reached the garage, she saw him lying on the cold ground, blood staining his shirt, but still breathing. She fell beside him, hands shaking. Liam! Liam, stay with me. He opened his eyes weakly, lips curved into a faint smile. Told you. I'd always protect you. Tears streamed down her face. You fool, she whispered. Why didn't you call for backup? Didn't have time, he muttered faintly. Couldn't risk them getting to you. Paramedics arrived, lifting him onto a stretcher. As they carried him away, Aria followed, sobbing quietly, the woman who had everything now terrified of losing the only thing that truly mattered. That night, she sat beside his hospital bed, watching the quiet rise and fall of his chest. The city outside kept shining, bright, heartless, endless, but inside that small room, everything she'd ever believed in felt shattered. She took his hand gently, whispering through tears. You didn't need to prove your worth, Liam. I was just too blind to see it. The machines beeped softly beside them. The rain tapped against the window once more. And for the first time in years, Aria Sullivan cried, not as a CEO, but as a woman who finally understood what love was meant to be. The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in the room. Aria sat motionless beside Liam's bed, her hand still clasped around his, as dawn painted faint streaks of gold across the hospital window. His face looked peaceful now, too peaceful. A few days ago, that same face had been shadowed by pain and exhaustion. Now, even in his sleep, he looked like someone who had finally laid down his burdens. Aria brushed a tear from his cheek, her own lips trembling. You saved me again, even when I didn't deserve it, she whispered. She looked at the bandages around his shoulder, the same shoulder that once carried her when her world had fallen apart. For years, she had believed power would protect her from pain. But power couldn't protect her from regret. Dr. Rowan entered quietly, clipboard in hand. He's stable, he said gently. The knife missed any vital arteries. He'll recover. Aria let out a shaky breath, her shoulders sagging with relief. Can I stay here? The doctor smiled kindly. He'd want you to. When he left, silence returned, a silence filled with everything she'd never said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box, something she had kept hidden for weeks. Inside was Liam's wedding ring. He had left it on their nightstand the night he walked out. Now, she slipped it gently onto his finger again. You may have walked away, Liam, but I never stopped being yours. Her voice broke as she pressed his hand to her heart. Memories in the rain. Later that night, Aria stepped outside the hospital for some air. The rain had begun again. Soft. She stood under the awning, watching raindrops fall onto the pavement. Every drop felt like a memory. Their first coffee. Their first fight. The night she told him he wasn't enough. You wanted peace, she whispered into the storm. And I gave you pain. A voice startled her. That's not true. She turned, it was Maya, her assistant, holding an umbrella. You've been here 3 nights, Maya said softly. You should rest. I can't, Aria murmured. Not until he wakes up. Maya hesitated. He will. He's strong. You just need to be ready for what comes after. Aria frowned. What do you mean? Maya looked uneasy. The police were here earlier. The man who attacked the garage, he wasn't just a random intruder. He was hired. Hired? Aria's heart froze. By who? Maya's eyes dropped. We don't know yet. But security found traces of Skyline's confidential data on his phone. Aria's mind raced. That means someone inside the company. The next morning, Aria returned to the office for the first time in a week. The whispers stopped as soon as she entered. Everyone had heard about the incident, about how her husband had nearly died protecting her. Her assistant handed her a sealed envelope. This came anonymously. It was left on your desk. Arya tore it open. Inside was a USB drive and a single note. He wasn't just protecting you. He was protecting Skyline from within. Confused, she plugged the drive into her laptop. Surveillance footage filled the screen, grainy, time-stamped. It showed Victor Kellen meeting with two executives late at night, exchanging folders and handshakes. Then, her blood turned cold. Among them stood someone she trusted most. "No," she whispered. "Not him." The footage ended, but her world felt like it had just collapsed. That evening, she rushed back to the hospital. When she entered Liam's room, his bed was empty. For a heartbeat, panic gripped her until she saw him standing near the window, one hand resting against the glass, his eyes on the horizon. He turned slowly as she stepped in. "You shouldn't be standing," she said, voice trembling. He smiled faintly. "Couldn't sleep. Old habits." She walked closer. For the first time, there was no wall between them, only the quiet ache of understanding. "You saved me again," she whispered. "You never needed saving," he said softly. "Just reminding." She swallowed hard. "Reminding of what?" He looked at her, really looked, and said, "That love isn't weakness, Arya. And peace doesn't mean giving up. It means knowing when to stop fighting the wrong war." Her tears finally fell. "I've been fighting you all this time." "No," he said gently, taking her hand. "You were fighting yourself." For a long moment, they just stood there, the city lights flickering beyond the window, their reflections blending in the glass like two halves of one soul. Just when she thought peace had finally found them, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text message. "Tell your husband to stop digging into Skyline's accounts, or next time, he won't be so lucky." Her stomach dropped. She showed the message to Liam. His jaw tightened. "They're watching us." "Who?" she asked. He looked at her with quiet resolve. "The same people I've been trying to protect you from, since before we even met." Arya's breath caught. "Liam, what are you saying?" He turned away, eyes darkening with a familiar shadow. "I left the military, but the war followed me home." The rain had stopped, but the storm had only just begun. Liam stood at the window of their apartment, the city lights flickering across his face. He had always loved the quiet, but tonight, silence felt heavy, dangerous, alive. Arya sat behind him, her phone still in her trembling hands, rereading the threatening message. "Tell your husband to stop digging into Skyline's accounts, or next time, he won't be so lucky." Her voice shook. "Liam, what do they mean? Why are they watching us?" He turned slowly, his expression calm but eyes filled with an old, weary pain. "Because they already know who I am." Arya frowned. "Who you are?" "You're my husband, you're." "No," he said softly, shaking his head. "That's who I became. But before that, I was something else." He walked over to the small cabinet by the bed and opened the drawer. From it, he pulled out a worn leather folder, faded at the edges, stamped with a military insignia. Her eyes widened. "Liam, what is this?" He took a deep breath. "Before I ever became your security guard, I was Captain Liam Rowan, Special Recon Division, assigned to international cybercrime and corporate infiltration cases. My job was to protect high-profile industries from silent attacks." She blinked, stunned. "But you never told me." "I couldn't," he said quietly. "Because 5 years ago, during an operation overseas, I uncovered something inside Skyline, your company." Arya's breath hitched. "My company?" "Not yours yet," he continued. "Back then, it was under Victor Kellen's control. I found proof he was using Skyline's international branches to move illegal funds under shell corporations. But before I could report it, the entire case was buried, and my team disappeared." Her eyes widened in horror. "Disappeared?" "Killed," Liam whispered, his voice breaking. Every single one of them. I survived, but I had to disappear. I changed my name. Started over. And then I met you. The air between them grew thick with silence. Arya felt her heart pounding in her chest. All this time, she thought he was just a quiet man who took simple work out of humility. She never imagined he was carrying a war inside him. You were undercover, she whispered. He nodded. At first, no. But when I saw Skyline rise again under you, I stayed close, because I knew the rot wasn't gone. I thought I could protect you from the same men who destroyed my team. Arya stood, her pulse racing. Then the attack in the parking garage. Wasn't random, Liam finished. They wanted to silence you before you found out the truth. Victor's still pulling the strings through your board. She took a shaky step back. But I trusted them. They've been with me since day one. That's how corruption works, Liam said softly. It hides behind loyalty. He moved closer, his voice steady, protective. You need to call a board meeting. Act normal. Pretend nothing's wrong. I'll handle the rest. She shook her head. No, Liam. Not this time. We handle it together. He met her gaze, surprised, and for the first time, proud. The next morning, the boardroom of Skyline Corporation was full. Executives sat stiffly, murmuring among themselves. Victor Kellen stood near the window, his sharp smile polished as ever. Arya entered in her usual power suit, flawless, composed, but her eyes held something new, quiet steel. Thank you all for coming on short notice, she began, her voice steady. There's a matter I need to address. Victor tilted his head. Of course, Ms. Rowan. We're always here to assist. Arya's eyes flicked toward the screen behind her. I'm sure you are. She pressed a button. The projector lit up. Footage filled the screen as security clips showing Victor and two other executives in a private room, exchanging encrypted files and signing offshore transfer papers. Gasps echoed around the table. Victor's smile froze. Where did you get this? Arya's voice was ice. From the same man you tried to kill. Everyone turned, and there he was. Liam walked in, no longer in his guard's uniform but a sharp black jacket with his old military tag visible. His presence alone changed the room's air. Victor's face paled. You remember me, Liam said calmly. You should. You left me to die. The tension snapped like a wire. Victor lunged for his phone, but Liam stepped forward. Don't. It's already over. The authorities have everything, the accounts, the evidence, the footage. Two officers entered, flanking the doorway. Victor turned to Arya, his voice shaking. You don't understand, Arya. You'll lose everything. Skyline will collapse. She stood tall. Then let it fall. I'd rather rebuild from dust than live off corruption. As the officers took him away, Victor's voice echoed down the hall, bitter, desperate. He'll destroy you too, Arya. You think you know him, but you don't. Liam's hand reached for hers. She didn't pull away. Days later, the chaos had settled. The news broke across every major outlet, corporate scandal exposed, Skyline cleans house. But inside their small apartment, peace had finally found its way home. Liam sat on the balcony, the evening light casting gold over his face. Arya joined him, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. You really should be charging for all that detective work, she teased softly. He chuckled. I was paid in something better. Oh really? What's that? She looked at him, really looked, and saw the same man she had fallen in love with. Not a soldier. Not a guard. Just a man who had never stopped protecting her, even when she couldn't see it. I should have believed in you, she said quietly. You did, he said. Just too late for both of us to see it. She reached for his hand. Not too late. Just right in time. The city hummed softly below, the chaos replaced by quiet calm. Weeks later, as Liam packed away his old files, an envelope fell from the folder. It was sealed, with his old unit insignia stamped on it. He opened it, a letter from his late commander. If you ever find peace, soldier, don't run from it. The hardest mission is learning how to live again. He smiled faintly, his eyes misting. Arya came up behind him and rested her chin on his shoulder. What's that? A reminder, he whispered. That I've finally completed my last mission. She smiled softly. Then what's next, Captain? He turned, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Just being your husband. No ranks. No secrets. Months passed. Skyline was reborn clean, transparent, guided by new leadership and vision. Arya led with humility now, her success no longer shadowed by pride, but anchored in compassion. And every evening, as she left her office, there was no guard waiting outside the door. Just a man, standing with a smile and 2 coffees, ready to walk her home. Rough day, boss, he'd tease. Not anymore, she'd reply, slipping her hand into his. And somewhere in the quiet streets of the city, beneath the fading lights, 2 souls who had once been torn apart by ego and silence found their way back, not through power, but through love that had survived every storm. Because sometimes, the greatest strength a man can have isn't in what he protects, but in who he forgives.